Okay, so for our final unit of the year, we're going to be discussing conic sections. So conic sections are formed when we have double cones, meaning that we have a cone on the top and a cone on the bottom, and we intersect these double cones with a plane. So in this first example with the parabola, we have a plane that's coming down at an angle to the base. That forms one of our conic sections called a parabola. Parabolas are used anytime we have an object that is like thrown up in the air. It's going to follow this path of a parabola if we throw it up and it falls down. Circles are formed when we have this plane that is parallel to the base of the cone. That intersection is going to form a perfect circle. If we have the cones and we take a plane through at an angle like this, where it does not cut through the base, then we're going to end up with a shape called an ellipse. And when we have the planets going around the sun, they follow an elliptical pattern. That's the reason why we study ellipses. And then lastly, we have the hyperbola, and this is going to be the most complicated conic section that we learn. The hyperbola actually has two parts to it, and this is formed when we come in and we not bisect, but intersect in this way such that we're perpendicular to the base of the cone. All right, so first we're going to talk about the distance formula. Do you guys remember the formula for distance? Anybody remember it from geometry? All right, well, here's the distance formula. The distance formula is the square root of the difference in the x's squared plus the difference in the y's and that quantity squared. That's our distance formula. That's how we can find the distance in between these 2 points right here. All right, the midpoint formula. You also did this in geometry. Okay, I'm going to write this formula. Probably it's going to be a little bit different than the way that you learned it in geometry. Here's the way I like to write it. If I'm trying to find the x coordinate of the midpoint, I have to find the average between the x's. How do we find average? What do we do? Carter?
Add them together, divide by the amount.
Right. So if I'm trying to find the average between the x's, I'm going to add those two together and divide by 2. That's how I find the x coordinate of the midpoint. If I want to find the y coordinate of the midpoint right here, I like to use this notation, midpoint's y value. Then I have to add the y's and divide by 2. So most of you probably learned this last year. You probably had it written like this, right? All together as one. But I like to write it like this because of some work we're going to do a little bit later. This form's going to make those problems a little bit easier. So for distance, we can use this. I'm also going to show you another more intuitive way. For midpoint, I'd like you to use this way, but this is also acceptable. All right, so in example 1 here, we're trying to find the distance and the midpoint for these 2 points. So we're going to graph these. I'm going to try to fit them on my graph. If I'm going to go over 8, I'm going to make my axis way down here so I can hopefully fit these on. So the point 8, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just estimating that. Then we have 3, -5. Okay, so here's our 2 points. We're trying to find the distance between these 2 points. I want to show you another way instead of using the distance formula. What I can do is I can think of this as being a right triangle. If I drop this down like so and drop this over here, this is what I'm trying to find, is this distance between the 2 points. Well, how do I find the length of this side of this right triangle? What do I do? Like this point here, was at 8, 7. This point was at 3, negative 5. I want to know how far it would be if I made this go completely perpendicular to that. How far is it from 3 to 8? 5. How far is it from negative 5 down here up to 7? 12. Anybody think they know the distance now if we've got 5 and 12? 13. Didn't we use that triple in our trig work? It went 5, 12, 13. So 13 is going to be that distance. I can find it that quickly by thinking of it that way. Now, let me show you the distance formula in action. It's the square root of my first x minus my second x squared plus my first y minus my second y squared. That's what the distance formula is. So what is 3 minus 8? What do you get if you square negative 5? So I have 25 plus, what's negative 5 minus 7? Negative 12 squared is 144. 25 plus 144 is 169. Do you know the square root of that? 13. Whichever way you want to do the problem, I'm telling you, if I were taking the ACTs, I'd be doing it this way because you get 1 minute per problem on the ACTs, and some of the problems take at least 2 or 3 minutes. You have to have some problems that are only going to take you 5 or 10 seconds. Okay? So I'm recommending that you try to get in the habit of thinking of it as a right triangle. And a lot of times those triples will show up. All right? Now we're going to find the midpoint. Guys, personally, I don't like formulas. I just think you can think this through logically for this midpoint. We want to know what's in the middle of 8 and 3. What's in the middle of 8 and 3? Add them up, divide by 2. What is it? 5.5, 5.5. However you want to think of that. What's in the middle of 7 and negative 5? Add them up and divide them by 2. What is it? 1. So we're saying that the point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.51 is the midpoint. Looks like it is, doesn't it? There's where the point 5.51 is. So yes, we've got the midpoint. Question. All right, so you're going to need to do that. Let's keep going. More circles or more with midpoints first. Okay, now we're going to do this kind of problem. Find the other endpoint for a segment if we have one endpoint of 2, negative 5, and we have the midpoint given. All right, so this one I'm going to draw out. You're not going to have to draw them all out, but I think to get the hang of what's going on, it helps to have a visual of it. So we've got 2, negative 5. There's my first point. That is an end point. I'm going to call it E. Then I have negative 2, 1. That is the midpoint. Which quadrant is the other endpoint going to be in? Quadrant 1, 2, 3, or 4? 2. It's going to be somewhere up here, isn't it? That's what we're trying to find, is the point that's somewhere up here. This is why I like using this formula. M sub x equals x1 plus x2 divided by 2. This is an endpoint, so this is x1. This is y1. This is a midpoint, so this is the midpoint value of x. And this is the midpoint value of y. So what am I going to put in for the midpoint value of x? Negative 2. X sub 1 is 2. We don't know the second x, so we're going to have to put plus x sub 2 divided by 2. How do we undo division of 2? just right there, times 2. So now 2 times -2 is -4 equals 2 plus x sub 2. So what is that coordinate going to be then if I solve this for my second x? -6. So my other point is going to be -6 comma something. Well, now I'm going to do the same thing. I want to find the other endpoint that's a y value. So I'm going to use this version of the formula. What is the midpoint value of the y? 1. Y midpoint value is 1. The first endpoint we were given was -5. I don't know the other one yet, so I'm just going to call it y. I don't have to call it y sub 2. That gets confusing. Divided by 2. What do I do now? Multiply by 2. I get 2 equals -5 plus y. What's y going to be? 7. So I'm saying the other endpoint should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and up 7. Right about there. Does it look pretty good?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there we go. There's the other endpoint. Questions? All right, let's come down here now to circles, switching gears a little bit. The standard graphing form of a circle, which you should have learned last year, is x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared is equal to r squared. The center is always going to be hk, and the radius is always going to be r. So we have to take the square root of this number to find out what r is. First, we're going to start in this direction. Write the equation of a circle with the given conditions. Here's the center. So this is H, this is K, they tell us R. I'm going to plug that into, see, we're going the other way. We want to come up with the equation. So I'm going to have to do X minus my H squared plus Y minus my K squared equals 5 squared. Well, what happens if we have minus a negative? What is that? So we have x plus 3 squared plus y minus 7 squared equals 25. That's the equation of the circle that has that center and that radius. You guys tried letter B. I'll be doing it up here. Check your answer once you've finished. Okay, want to be quick with it? You should have it by now. Did you get it right? Do you guys know how to square 2 radicals 7? You had to square the 2. 2 squared is 4. Radical 7 squared is 7. So 4 times 7 is 28. That's how we got that number there. You could also do 2 radical 7 times 2 radical 7 to square it. 2 times 2 is 4. Radical 49. 4 times 7, 28. Okay, now we're going to go in the other direction. We're given the equation and we want to find the center in the radius. Okay, look at the formula. It's x minus h and it's y minus k. So what that means is we're going to have to change those signs. All right, so what do you think the center is going to be then? 1, -2. It says -1, so that means that h is 1. This is +2, so that means that the k value had to be -2. And then what's the radius going to be? 4. We're going to go ahead and graph this. So we have a center at 1, -2. The directions also say to state the coordinates of 4 points lying on the circle. Well, to find 4 points lying on the circle, I'm going to go up 4, down 4, right 4, left 4. Okay, I'm going to start by going right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can count out what that point is, but here's what I'd like you to be able to do. If I go to the right 4, what does it change, the X or the Y? X. I would add 4 to my X. So if I add 4 to my X, I'm going to get 5. Y stays the same. That's what happens if I go right 4. Now I'm going to go left 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I could count this out, but if I go to the left 4, I'm just going to take this 1 and subtract 4 from it. 1 minus 4 is -3, and my Y does not change. Those are 2 points. I need 2 more. I'm going to go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I go up 4 from my center, my X doesn't change, but I have to add 4 to my Y. And lastly, going down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. My X does not change, but I have to subtract 4 from the Y. I'm hoping you can get to where you don't have to draw the picture to come up with this. Where does that look out? 1, 2, 3, 4. My circle doesn't look great, but it's good enough. Okay, completing the square. All right, guys. I don't know if you did completing the square with circles last year. If not, you're really going to want to focus in. This can be challenging for people. We are trying to take this equation and get it into this form right here. So here's what you have to do. First thing you do is you get the x terms together. I have an x squared and I have a minus 14x. I have to get those together. I'm going to leave some space and I'm going to put plus a blank. Now I'm going to get my y terms together. So I have plus y squared and I have plus 4y. I'm again going to leave a blank. I want to take this 11 to the other side. So what's it going to become if I take that 11 to the other side? Positive 11. Now, I'm trying to make this so this is a perfect square trinomial. Here's the important part, guys. To make this a perfect square trinomial, you have to take half of b and square it. Take half of b and square it. So what's half of 14? Square it. So I'm going to add 49 here. If I'm going to add 49 to the left, I also have to add 49 to the right. Whatever I do to the left side, I have to do to the right side. What am I going to put in this blank? 4. I take half of 4 is 2, square it is 4. I added 4 there. I'm also going to have to add 4 to the right side. So here's what I've got. This should now be a perfect square binomial. It should go down into some quantity squared. Does anyone remember from earlier in the year how this would factor? Nice. Then I have plus. Do you remember how this would factor? Y plus 2. Good. Now I need to add these numbers. What's 11 plus 49 plus 4? Perfect. Can you see now how we can find the center and we can find the radius? Now you can see. What's the center going to be? 7, -2. And what's the radius going to be? 8. Okay? Do you feel like you can do that on like 3 being definitely yes? All right, well then try it for letter B. I'll be working it up here if you get stuck. Give me a quick hand raise when you got it right. All right. Most people have got it. If you don't, then just copy it down and try it again later. Questions? All right. Final stretch here. Last couple problems. Number 6. Find the equation of a circle in standard form with this center of 3, -2, containing the point 5, -6. Now, I like to do a little sketch on this. 3, -2 is right here. 5, -6 is right here. What am I going to have to know in order to find the radius of this circle? The distance, right? I need to know the distance between these 2 points. Because this isn't just straight out to the right, left, up, or down. So I got to use the distance formula. I'd love for you to be able to use the distance formula really fast. Does anybody already know what the answer is for the radius? Not yet? How far is it from, oh, never mind. Never mind. It's not as easy as I thought. I thought I made it a triple, but I did not. So we're going to have to do a little work. Okay. So the distance is going to be, what's the difference between our x's? I want you to do this quicker than you normally would. What's the difference there? 2, and we're going to square it. Plus, what's the difference there? 4, and we're going to square it. Okay? So that's 4 plus 16. So then that radius is going to be radical 20 is our radius. Don't even waste your time simplifying it, because what are we just going to do with it when we put it into our formula? Square it. So why bother simplifying? So we have our center, we have our h and our k. So it's going to go x minus 3 squared plus, then what? Good. Equals 20, right? So we just needed to know how far apart those were. And I thought I had made these 3 apart, because then what would the radius have been if those were 3 apart? 5, yeah. All right. This always confuses people. Write the equation of the circle in standard form with center of 4, -2 and tangent to the x-axis. All right, do a little sketch again. 4, -2 is our center. Does anybody remember what tangent means?
Against.
Right up against it, barely touches it. So tangent to the x-axis is going to look like this, just barely touching that x-axis, barely touching it. Can I quickly find the distance from that center to that x-axis? Yeah, because I'm going straight up. So what is that distance from here to here? 2, right? So the radius is 2. So now we've got our center, we've got our HK, and we have our radius. Go ahead and write the equation. Do it on your own. Oh, shoot, I'm writing that in the wrong spot. All right, you guys get it right? Okay. The next problem we're not going to even do, I'm leaving this up to you. This is a challenge problem. There are actually 2 possible equations that will work for this, okay? And it is not as easy as you think. Most people think that all they have to do is find the middle of these points to find the center, but that's not true. Because what's the radius of the circle if I know the circumference is 10 pi? Well, just 5 would be the radius. So is the distance between these 2 points 10? What's the distance between these 2 points? 6, right? So if these are 6 apart, they are not The middle of these two is, yeah, it's just a chord. So that's where I'm going to leave it at. Okay. I'm going to actually post the answer in the video link. So if you want to try this, that would be great. It would be something like a bonus if we ever had it on a test, but it won't be an actual part of the quiz or anything. Okay. Any questions over circles or distance and midpoint? All right. Very good.